is a hedgehog. My sister loves hedgehogs. She had one when we were growing up named Buddy, if I remember correctly. I don't know what happened to him, but we had him for a while, and he was nice, and he ate bugs, and you had to be very careful whenever you petted him, which is pretty self-explanatory when it comes to a hedgehog. You pet them one way, you're fine. You try to go against the grain, and you're going to get spikes in your hand. So this video is the first part of the two-parter about Shimotsuki Yasuie, the Daimyo of the Hakumai region. The Yasu, the hedgehog, was one of his nicknames, and also, Tonoyasu or Yasu, or, the Buddha of Ebisu town, depending on which way you want to try to describe him. He's got a lot of names, and a lot of them tend, and they all tend to stick pretty well with him. Also, just, Toko's father is another one that sticks with that. And this video will be going from when from basically like his birth, or as far back as we know about him, all the way up until just, the execution of Odin, and then when the other daimyos go to try to fight Kaido. And then the second video will be about pretty much everything that happened in the next 20 years, up to his death, and then kind of like his legacy and everything there. So that's what we'll be dealing with these two videos. And yes, Yasuie obviously has the connection to the cover story that is going on right now, and I will touch on that when I get to, his legacy and postmortem stuff later on. So, as I said, some basic information about Yasuie. He is, of course, the former daimyo of the Hakumai region during the time of the rule of the Kozuki family, and at the beginning of, Orochi's rule and everything. And he had several titles that, he held at that point in time, mostly Yasu the Hedgehog. And he was a very loyal friend to Odin. I'll get to that. He was also a very, get your head out of your butt, Odin, and I'm going to kick your butt anyway, Odin, type of a friend, which is sometimes a good friendship to have. And, all of that. So, his age at death was 71. And so, that would have made him, because let's see, Odin would have been, because Odin and Kaido are the same age, and Kaido is 59, I think. 58 or 59 is how old. I think he's 59. So then, Odin would have been 59 as well, if he was still alive. And that would have made Yasuie, 12 years older than him, but a lot more mature than Odin. So there's that. Going into Yasuie's history. So, he was born 71 years ago, probably in the Hakumai region, although, given how that lands, I was trying to remember, this probably would have been after, well, he definitely would have been born after everything happened with, the Kurozumis, with Orochi's grandfather trying to take power and trying to kill the other daimyos. There's the theory that since two of the regions ended up being ruled, both the Ringo and the Hakumai region ended up being ruled over by a member of the Shimotsuki family, there are theories that the Hakumai region had originally been ruled over by the Amatsuki family, and that family had been wiped out by the Kurozumi family, by Orochi's grandfather. And then a new daimyo needed to be appointed to, take care of the Hakumai region, and that ended up being Yasuie later on, or like Yasuie's father and then Yasuie after that, is kind of like the thought there that we have. We don't know that much about his childhood. We don't know anything about his childhood. He probably was just raised in the Hakumai region, and then eventually while Sukiyaki was, shogun of Wano, Yasuie was, made the daimyo of the Hakumai region. Probably like his father passed away and he was made the daimyo. Then we get into stuff with Odin. So, and Odin, so during the Odin flashback, we get this where 41 years ago, after Odin has been exiled from the flower capital by Sukiyaki, shortly before then is when Yasuie took Orochi in and had as a servant and everything. And of course, Orochi, as I mentioned in the Orochi video, did not tell Yasuie that he was a member of the Kurozumi family or anything like that. And I don't think that Yasuie would have held that against Orochi necessarily. It may have made him like keep a closer eye on Orochi, but I don't think it would have made him like necessarily not give him the job or anything like that. He may have just been a little bit more, paid a little bit more attention to Orochi at that point in time, just to keep an eye out for anything. But what ends up happening is, of course, he takes Orochi in as a servant, and then following the Mountain God incident, when Odin is exiled, he, along with his followers at the time, which are, I think at that point in time, just Kinemon and Denjiro, I believe are the only two that he has at that point in time, they end up making their way to the Hakumai region. And they stay there for a while, because Yasuo is like, yeah, sure, you can stay here. And then basically what ends up happening is Odin and his crew end up, just causing a bunch of problems there at his place, at the castle in Hakumai. They just cause a lot of problems there, unfortunately. And some of that is like embellished by Orochi, because like Orochi says that Odin stole money, but he didn't actually do that. That was just Orochi stealing the money and then claiming Odin did it when he left and everything. But I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure Odin and his crew were still the ones who like destroyed the rooms they were staying in at the Hakumai castle. So there's that. But during this part is kind of when at one point in time we have this kind of confrontation to a degree between Yasuie and Odin, when Yasuie kind of like is trying to knock some sense into Odin by he just straight up like kicks him and then like punches him or whatever. Now, to be fair, we never actually see Yasuie full on fight. We never see him in a full on fight. He doesn't actually fight against Odin. He punches him and like kicks him a little bit, but he doesn't end up actually fighting him. We do see him training with a sword at various points in time, possibly the same katana that is now currently being used, that Yamato is trying to return home, return to the Hakumai region, but we don't know exactly. And as I said, we don't really get anything that specifies how good of a swordsman or how strong Yasuie was. Given the fact that he lived in Wano, he probably, and was like a warrior there, he probably at least had like observation hockey and armament hockey. But beyond that, we don't know. And he may have only had like the basics of it at that point in time. But, it's never confirmed one way or the other about that, or even about his sword skills. And we don't even know like the name of his sword. That might be something that gets named later on in the cover story. When it's finally, taken to the Enma Shrine. But yeah, we don't really see anything about Yasuie's fighting ability, fighting prowess or anything beyond the fact that he does train, and he's not part of, and I'll mention this later, he's not part of the group of the daimyo that go and try to, take down Kaido, and that end up in the cave with Yamato. He's not part of that group. But eventually, of course, what ends up happening is Yasuo is trying to like kind of, make Odin realize that the reason your father sent you away is not because he doesn't love you. He does love you very much. You're his only child, and he loves you and everything. The reason he sent you away is because you need to learn to become a better person, become a better man if you are going to become the Shogun of Wano one day. if you were going to take over for him when his time is finished. And this is, this is stuff that I went over in Odin's videos as well, is like part of what happens as he's traveling around Wano and seeing all of these different types of situations. And it's not that Odin was ever 100% a bad person anyway. He was just very misguided with, trying to help the flower capital with its drought by moving a river. That didn't help. That just flooded the flower capital. And then but then he goes and gambles a whole bunch and does all the harem things and everything else like that. Where it's, it's like, those aren't good intentions anyway. But, so there's a lot of that stuff. And Yasuie is kind of trying to get Odin to figure out the fact that it's just like, you need to grow up. You need to start acting like a man who can be the Shogun of Wano, who can take responsibility for his own actions and all of this type of stuff. Your father is trying to help you become that by kicking you out of your home. Because you're doing nothing to help your claim to the throne, to help your, claim to the shogunate, to have the citizens actually care for you and everything. You cannot prove yourself. I mean, he kind of proves himself when he was sent to work in, the mine, the prison mines and everything, and Odin eventually, became, very well renowned there and everything. And those were good things, that he, built up and, learned how to do and everything. But still, he still very much does not seem to understand that sometimes you can't just beat a problem down. Sometimes you have to talk it out. Sometimes you have to do the diplomatic process as opposed to the, ooh, I'm going to kill the giant thing that tried to attack me process, hence the giant boar. To be fair, that was a life and death situation for a lot of people, and the flower capital was being under attack, but you get the idea. So Yasuie is kind of trying to get Odin to realize this. Eventually, of course, Odin leaves, and Odin gets blamed for destroying the room, which is probably his fault anyway. And Yasuie is just like, oh God, help me. And then later, Yasuie, of course, reads in the news about, Odin taking over Curry and becoming the new leader of Curry. Not quite the Daimyo yet, but the leader of Curry. And then eventually the leader of Curry, and how he is starting to turn Curry around and make it better and everything. And Yasuie, I'm pretty sure, is sitting there going see, I told him he could do great things if he just put his mind to it. He can be a good ruler. And I'm pretty sure that's probably what's going through Yasuie's head at the time when he reads all of that. Then we get to the bit that we kind of see in the flashback with the scabbards, when we're kind of getting them a little bit, finding out a little bit more about Yasuie when we get some of those flashbacks. And what we have is, of course, the future scabbards, minus Kiku, make their way to the Hakume region, and they are caught by Yasuie as they are trying to steal money from him, because they're like, well, Odin needs money for stuff. And Yasuie, and they all get captured, or all just tied up there, which is just hilarious. And it's all of them except Kiku. He's like, well, I'm glad you didn't bring Kiku. She didn't need to be a part of this. She didn't need to get in trouble for any of this stuff. And what ends up happening is, of course, they're kind of saying, don't do this. We need the money for Lord Odin and everything. He needs this money and all that. And what Yasuie does is, instead of punishing them, he says this after he gives them the money and then gives them even more. And he's like, learn manners and buy books. Fill yourselves with knowledge and wisdom. If hoodlums like yourselves were to become Odin's retainers right now, you would just shame his name. He will become the Wano country's shogun one day. He will become the Wano country's shogun one day, and his supporters must be the best samurai in the entire country. All of you must become the capital's, no, the entire country's guardians. And he says that to them, and it is kind of this moment where it hits them that it's just they've just been these vagabonds and strays following Odin around for the past couple of years, And, and Ashura Doji was this leader of the gangs and everything like that in the Curry region and everything before Odin came along and defeated him and took over. And it is kind of this moment where they're like, oh yeah, that is true. Odin is disowned or not, he is technically the only heir to the throne at the moment, the only possible future shogun of Wano at the moment, legitimate one, type of thing. And they're like, yeah, we need to do better. And they do. And of course they take Yasuie's advice to heart. And we see this transformation that happens with them. They spend the next 2 years or so, educating themselves, training, not just, training their minds, but they also train their bodies. They become much better samurai, much stronger and everything else like that, improving on their sword skills and everything. And all this other stuff. And, they better themselves, and this is because of what Yasuie told them to do. And it is, you are a reflection of Odin. If you bring shame to yourselves, you are bringing shame to Odin as his retainers, as his vessels. And that is something that you cannot allow to have happen. And they all take that to heart. Conjurer playing along. They all take that to heart, and they all train, and they better themselves and everything. And then we see the results of that work, when they go to the flower capital. And when they accompany Odin to the flower capital, and Odin gets to go and see Sukiyaki again. And Yasu may have been somehow informed of this or seen it in the papers. I don't remember if that part ends up in the papers or not. But Yasu sees some of that stuff and everything. And he's probably sitting back and going, okay, Odin's improving. He's not 100% better, but he's gotten a lot more mature. And now his retainers have gotten better. Good. And it's the thing is that Odin is Yasuie's friend. It's not like Yasuie doesn't like Odin. He very much cares for him, and he does respect him, and he knows that he is capable of great things, of becoming this great leader and of leading Wano into the future and everything. And he sees the same thing when it comes to the Scabbards, that they are also capable of greatness in regards to, protecting Wano and helping Odin in his journey. From there, we jump to what would coincide for when Whitebeard shows up. So, after Odin has joined the Whitebeard Pirates, left Wano, Izo, Inarashi, and Nekomamushi are with him and everything. Then we have it that Yasuie, along with any of the other Daimyo, the other 3 Daimyo, are called to the capital. And where they're told that, there's this very important meeting that has to happen with Sukiyaki. And they get there, and it is, revealed to them that Sukiyaki is very ill and everything, and, seems to be on his deathbed and everything. And he explains, and, and Yasuie watches as Sukiyaki. I know the names. Why is it so hard for me to do this? Sukiyaki is like, my son has left the country. Therefore, I will name a temporary heir and a temporary shogun should I die. And that will be my son's loyal friend and sworn brother, Kurozumi Orochi. And of course, this is not actually Sukiyaki. This is Higurashi in disguise as Sukiyaki and everything. And this is when Yasu learns that Orochi is actually a member of the Kurozumi family, and he asks Orochi why Orochi never told Yasuie about this. And he's kind of like, well, I felt ashamed and I didn't want you to turn me away or whatever, but I'm nothing like my grandfather and everything, and all of that stuff. And Yasu, I don't think Yasu believes him for a minute. I don't think Yasuie believes him for a minute. But he has to play along. And eventually, of course, then we get it to where, we know eventually Odin returns from his journey and everything, and that Toki is there, and Momo and Hiyori and everything. And I'm sure Yasuie possibly met, maybe Toki and the children when they first returned. He may have traveled to Curry and met her and the children and everything. And said that he was this ally of Odin's and everything, and the scabbards would have confirmed that Yasuie is an ally and everything, and she may have told Yasuie about some of Odin's adventures, and possibly even once Odin returned, he may have gone and told Yasuie about some more of his adventures and everything, possibly in between having to go and dance naked in the capital. But the next concrete thing that we see happen is that, so Odin and the Scabbards head off to Onigashima to try to take down Kaido and everything. And from there, Yasuie and his men actually go to Odin Castle, where they are there to protect Odin's family, to protect, Toki and Momo and Hiyori and everything. Because should something happen to Odin, then Momonosuke is technically the heir to the throne, or is the rightful heir to the throne, heir to the shogunate. And so we have a lot of that stuff happening. And, Yasuie and his men are just there to try to protect them. And then, of course, we get to the day of Odin's execution. And, Yasuie, like the majority of the country, didn't know why Odin kept doing all of this stuff and making a fool of himself in the flower capital. And of course, he receives the information, as does the rest of the kingdom, the rest of the country at the time, about Shinobu explaining to everybody why Odin kept dancing naked in the capital and everything. And he reads this, and he, why Odin's been acting like a fool for the past 5 years. And I don't know if we get something where Yasuie is just like, I knew he would have had a reason for it or whatever, but he just, he receives the information. And of course, Yasuie knows Odin well enough to know that there had to have been a reason for why he was doing that. Plus, he wouldn't trust Orochi anyway, and everything. So, Yasuie would have gone through all of that. Then we get to after Odin's death, after his execution, Yasuie, along with the other 3 daimyos, are approached by Orochi and asked to basically bend the knee, to submit to him. He gives them the choice to submit to him. And all of the daimyo refuse. They're like, we are not doing this. We are not bowing to you. And of course, the other 3, the other 3, why can I not remember all of their names? Tempora. I don't remember. The other 3 daimyo are the ones that ends up. They're the ones that I mentioned in the previous video with Shimotsuki. Why do I do this to myself? I know I know the names to a degree, but the one who's Zoro's great uncle, Shimotsuki Ushimaru. Those 3 go to Onigashima and they try to attack Kaido as well. Yasui is the one who stays behind. And I don't know if it's confirmed that he goes with them, but he's the only survivor and manages to escape. And then, he then hides out in Wano as Tonoyasu basically for the next 20 years, which I'll get to in the other video. But I don't remember if it's ever confirmed if he was part of the group that went, or if they all decided at the same time that one of us has to stay behind. And Yasu, you're the one who knew Odin the best out of us. You're the one who knew his family best out of us. Maybe you should be the one to stay behind. Or maybe he may have been, well, no, he wouldn't have been the oldest. Maybe he would have been, but I don't know. Maybe the other three just happened to be better fighters, and they're like, you should stay here. You are more the wise one of us as opposed to the fighter among us, type of a thing. So there's possible things there that could have happened. So that's kind of basically how that part of Yasuie's life ends. Is he has to watch three people who are kind of his friends go off to battle or watch them get captured in battle, and he is the only survivor. So he's got a lot of that survivor's guilt there, I'm sure. Plus, at this point in time, he would know about Toki's prophecy, I would assume, and they have no idea, they believe that, Momonosuke and a bunch of the other ones are dead, and they have no idea where Hiyori is or anything like that, but the other ones all have their graves up on top of Odin Castle and everything, and the burned remains of Odin Castle. But beyond that, that's the end of, like, that part of Yasuie's life. He's no longer the daimyo of the Hakumei region, and he heads off to do whatever for the next 20 years, which I'll get to in the next video. So that's what I have for this one. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.